Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but nothing really changes? Like there's effort, sincerity, discipline, but the universe remains silent? Maybe you've visualized, affirmed, meditated, written things down. Maybe you've followed techniques, read books, watched countless videos, and still, deep down, way down, the question lingers: why hasn't it happened yet? What I'm about to share with you will completely change how you see manifestation forever. In fact, most people have been approaching this backwards their entire lives. And in the next few minutes, you're going to discover why 99% of manifestation attempts fail before they even begin. But first, let me tell you something that might shock you. The universe doesn't respond to what you do, it responds to what you are. And there's a hidden sequence, an ancient code that governs all creation that most people never learn. Those who discover it, their entire reality shifts. Those who don't, they stay trapped in the endless cycle of trying without receiving. Then comes the doubt, then the tiredness. Not a physical tiredness, but a tiredness of the soul, a quiet exhaustion that feels like running in circles inside yourself. You wake up each morning with the same hope, apply the same methods, carry the same burning desire, and go to bed with that familiar ache of incompleteness. But what if everything you've been taught about manifestation has been backwards? What if the very thing you think is helping you is actually blocking you? I discovered something in Dr. Joe Dispenza's research that will blow your mind, and I'll share that revelation with you in just a moment. Most people try to manifest starting with action. That's what we were taught. To do more, try harder, push ourselves forward. But here's what they don't tell you. This approach actually repels what you want. It creates a frequency that the universe cannot respond to, and until you understand why, you'll keep spinning your wheels. The universe operates on a completely different logic. There's a hidden structure that governs all creation, an ancient code that says, first you be, then you do, and only then you have. Be, do, have, not the other way around. And when you discover what being actually means, not the spiritual fluff but the measurable science behind it, everything changes. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research has shown us something extraordinary. The heart generates an electromagnetic field 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain. Your heart's magnetic field can be detected several feet away from your body. But here's the part that will change everything for you. When most people try to manifest, they're actually broadcasting the wrong frequency from this field. They think they're asking for what they want, but they're actually asking for its opposite. I'll explain exactly how this happens and how to fix it, but first you need to understand something even deeper. Something that Neville Goddard knew decades before science could prove it. He taught that the state of being is the origin point. That what you are inside, in silence, in presence, in stillness, is what truly manifests on the outside. But here's what no one talks about. Most people have never actually experienced true being. What they think is being is actually just another form of doing. And this confusion is why they stay stuck. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk you through what real being feels like, and you'll instantly recognize why your previous attempts haven't worked. So take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you can. Feel your breath moving through your body, because the journey we're about to take together isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering something you've forgotten, something that will change everything once you reconnect with it. Some people live exhausted, but it's not their body that's tired. It's their soul, tired of doing, and still feeling stuck in the same place. The world applauds movement, celebrates productivity, idolizes urgency. But here's what I discovered that changed my entire understanding. The universe listens to silence. It responds to the truth that vibrates when no one is watching, when no one is demanding anything from you. And this is where it gets interesting. Most people's actions are actually self-sabotage in disguise. They're doing things to avoid feeling something deeper. And the universe picks up on this energetic dishonesty immediately. But there's a way to turn your actions into magnetic attractors, and I'll show you exactly how in just a moment. Action sometimes is just a disguise, a noise you make to avoid facing the stillness of being. How many times have you done something just to avoid feeling, just to distract yourself from pain, doubt, or that subtle fear of not being enough? Action becomes a defense, a way to compensate for inner insecurity, as if doing more could somehow prove your worth. But here's what Dr. Dispenza's brain scans reveal that will shock you. When you're in a state of stress, survival, or emotional chaos, your brain waves become incoherent. The neural networks fire randomly. And this incoherence, this inner noise, gets transmitted through your electromagnetic field. The universe isn't just listening to your thoughts or actions, it's reading your entire energetic signature. And chaos creates chaos. When what you do doesn't match how you feel, the field simply doesn't respond. You might work 18-hour days, follow every technique, push yourself to exhaustion. But if your inner state is saying, "I'm not enough," or "this isn't working," that's the frequency being broadcast. And the universe, which is always listening to your vibration, reflects that exact energy back to you. Here's the disturbing truth that most manifestation teachers won't tell you. Urgency is a trap. When everything feels urgent, the soul goes quiet. You start to act without presence, like someone lost in an emotional maze, trying to escape instead of entering within. But you can't manifest on the outside what hasn't been built on the inside. And even when you achieve something, it still feels like something's missing. You land the job, the money, the relationship, but inside, there's still that echo of emptiness, a space that no accomplishment can truly fill. Because when you manifest from fear, pressure, or lack, you might get things, yes, but not peace. And without peace, nothing lasts. But what I'm about to reveal will change everything. The paradox is this: the more you push, the more disconnected you become from true creation. Because creation is not about force, it's about alignment. It's a dance with the invisible. And in that dance, the most powerful step is something most people never experience. The moment you stop trying to force reality and begin to feel the frequency of what already is, that's when the magic happens. But there's a specific way to access this frequency, and it has nothing to do with positive thinking or visualization. It's something far deeper, something I'll share with you shortly. Pause this video for just 30 seconds. I want you to place your hand on your heart and simply breathe. Don't try to change anything. Just feel your heartbeat. Feel the rhythm that's been with you since before you could think, since before you had desires or fears. This rhythm, this is your connection to the field. This is where manifestation truly begins. But most people never learn how to actually use this connection. Here's something that will completely shift your perspective. Many people try to manifest not out of wholeness, but out of emptiness. They want to have, so they can finally feel like they are. They try to attract things to fill a space inside that's been aching for a long time. But the universe doesn't respond to the void. It responds to the vibration of completeness. And when your desire is born from lack, it carries the energy of absence. And absence that can't create presence. But here's what's really happening on an energetic level that no one talks about. When you want something from lack, you're actually repelling it. The frequency of "I don't have" is so strong that it overrides any techniques you try to use. Think about the last time you desperately wanted something. Really feel into that memory. Notice the quality of that wanting. Was there a tightness in your chest? A grasping feeling? An underlying fear that if you didn't get it, something would be wrong with you? That's the frequency of lack. And lack, no matter how intensely you feel it, can only create more lack. But here's where it gets fascinating. Trying to have something just to validate your identity is like chasing your own shadow. It keeps moving away the more you reach for it. You end up thinking, if I just get that job, that partner, that money, then I'll feel good enough. But the universe isn't fooled. It feels the frequency behind your request. Dr. Dispenza calls this living in the emotions of the past. You're trying to use future outcomes to heal past wounds. But the field of infinite possibilities doesn't respond to your history. It responds to your present moment frequency. And here's the key that changes everything. When you're constantly reaching for something to make you feel complete, you're broadcasting incompleteness. And incompleteness is exactly what shows up in your reality. But what I'm about to share will break this cycle forever. There's a way to desire from fullness instead of emptiness. A way to want things not because you need them, but because you're so abundant that creating them becomes natural. And when you learn this distinction, this is when manifestation becomes effortless. Comparison is another subtle trap that most people fall into without realizing it. You see someone else achieving something, and suddenly you feel like you should have it too. Not because your soul resonated with it, but because your conditioned mind believes that's what success looks like. And so, you start manifesting things that aren't even yours, desires that don't belong to your truth. This creates a cycle of emotional scarcity. You want more because you feel less, and the more you chase, the more distant your fulfillment becomes, because you're trying to use the external to fix the internal. But manifestation doesn't work that way. The field doesn't respond to how badly you want something. It responds to the energy you carry while wanting it. None of this means you should stop dreaming or desiring. It's not about abandoning your goals, it's about checking the place they're coming from. And here's the secret that will change everything. When your desires are born from essence, from joy, expansion, inspiration, they already feel good before they arrive. Because they're not trying to prove anything. They're simply expressions of who you are. That's why some manifestations feel heavy once they come true. They were created by a version of you that was trying to fix itself. But now that they're here, you still feel incomplete. Because the manifestation was never the answer. The answer was always alignment with your being. And I'm about to show you exactly what this alignment looks like and how to access it. Before anything existed, there was being. Before time, before form, before effort, there was presence. And it's from that presence that everything is born. This is why being is the true beginning. But here's what most people don't understand. Being isn't a state you achieve. It's a state you remember. And once you remember it, everything else becomes automatic. Being is the energy that shapes all that follows. It's the silent vibration beneath your thoughts, beneath your actions, beneath your identity. And even if the noise of the world made you forget, that presence is still there, untouched, waiting for you to return. But there's a specific way to access it that most people never learn. Being isn't a role you play. It's not a version of yourself created to fit in or be liked. Being is the frequency you emit when you're simply at peace with your own existence. It's the energy behind your breath, the truth that doesn't need to be said, the stillness that doesn't need to prove anything. Current neuroscience research shows us something remarkable that will change how you see yourself forever. The heart contains approximately 40,000 sensory neurons. Essentially, the heart has its own nervous system. It's not just pumping blood, it's processing information, making decisions, and communicating with the brain through multiple pathways. But here's the breakthrough discovery. When your heart and brain achieve coherence, when they synchronize their rhythms, your entire electromagnetic field shifts. Dr. Dispenza's studies with meditators have documented this coherent state repeatedly. Brain scans show gamma wave patterns associated with elevated consciousness. Heart rate variability measurements reveal a state of autonomic balance. Most remarkably, the electromagnetic field around these individuals becomes measurably stronger and more organized. This isn't mysticism, it's measurable physiology. And when you're in this state, the universe has no choice but to respond. Because being is the original code of creation, the silent force that attracts all things into order. But here's what's going to blow your mind. This coherent state is what ancient wisdom traditions called being. It's not something you force, something you remember. You don't need to build a new identity. You need to let the truth rise. And the truth rises when you release the performance, when you stop comparing, when you stop trying to be, and just allow yourself to exist. In that state, you're not asking, you're vibrating. You're not seeking, you're emanating. And the universe feels that. It recognizes when someone is simply being. There's a profound difference between a constructed identity and accessed essence. Constructed identity needs constant defense. It's fragile, noisy, and exhausting. Essence just is. It doesn't argue, it doesn't chase, it simply radiates. Right now, as you're listening to these words, feel into that space between your thoughts. That gap where no story is running, where no problem needs solving. That's not emptiness, that's essence. That's the frequency that creates worlds. And it's been there all along, waiting for you to stop and recognize it. When you live from this place of being, something shifts in your relationship with time. You're no longer rushing toward a future where you'll finally be happy. You're not trapped in a past that defines your worth. You exist in the eternal now, where all possibilities live. And from this timeless space, you begin to align with what wants to emerge through you. But here's where most people get confused, and this confusion costs them everything. They think that once they've accessed being, they should just sit there and wait. That action somehow contradicts presence. This is the biggest mistake you can make, because true being naturally expresses itself through aligned action. And I'm about to show you exactly what this looks like. Most of us were taught to begin with doing. From a young age, we were told, work hard, take action, push through. So we learned to act first and hope that results would follow. But when action doesn't come from being, it turns into noise, busy movement, exhaustion without fulfillment. That's why so many people are always doing, always planning, always hustling, and yet they feel stuck. Because when your actions don't match your inner truth, they lose their power, they lose direction. And the universe, which listens to your frequency, not your effort, responds with confusion. Here's the revelation that changed everything for me. We've confused intensity with alignment. We think that doing more means we're closer to manifesting, but alignment doesn't respond to volume. It responds to vibration, and a small action taken from a deeply aligned state of being is more powerful than 100 actions taken from fear, pressure, or lack. Watch what happens in your body when you force yourself to take action you don't believe in. Notice the tension, the resistance, the way your breath becomes shallow. Your nervous system knows when you're acting from authenticity versus acting from should. And that knowing gets transmitted through every cell, every gesture, every interaction. This is when mental noise kicks in. That inner voice that says, it's not enough. You're falling behind. You need to push harder. And suddenly you're trapped in urgency, in overthinking, in overdoing. The body is tired, the energy is low, and nothing seems to move forward because the vibration is off, because the action isn't rooted in presence. But when your actions come from being, everything shifts. You act not because you need to fix something, but because it's a natural expression of who you are. You move, not to prove, but to express. Your actions become fluid, intentional, magnetic. There's a quality of action that emerges from coherence that feels completely different. It's effortless yet powerful, gentle yet unwavering. You find yourself knowing exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Not because you figured it out mentally, but because your whole system, heart, brain, body, field, is aligned with a larger intelligence. This aligned action doesn't feel like work. It feels like play, like dancing, like a natural expression of life force moving through you. You're no longer pushing against reality. You're flowing with it. You're no longer trying to make something happen. You're allowing something to happen through you. But here's what's really extraordinary. When you act from this place of alignment, the universe begins to respond in ways that seem almost magical. Synchronicities increase, opportunities appear. People show up at exactly the right time. It's not that you're forcing these things to happen, you're simply matching the frequency where they naturally occur. From this place of aligned action, you begin to understand something profound. Doing is no longer about getting, it's about expressing. It's about allowing the infinite intelligence that flows through you to take form in the world. And once you're acting from this alignment, what you want begins to appear without struggle. But there's still one more piece to this puzzle, one final element that most people never understand. And this is where everything comes together in a way that will completely transform your relationship with manifestation. Because it's not enough to just be and do. You have to understand what having actually means at the deepest level. Everything you manifest is just a mirror of your inner state. The outer world isn't a reward or a punishment. It's a reflection. And reflections don't lie. You might try to look confident, act positive, or speak affirmations, but the universe doesn't hear your words. It hears your field, and your field responds with absolute precision to what you're truly vibrating. That's why manifestation isn't a goal, it's a result, a consequence. It doesn't start on the outside, it starts on the inside. When you are aligned, when your being is coherent, actions become powerful. And when your actions are aligned, the results, the having, come naturally. Not because you force them, but because you were already resonating with them. Here's the paradox that will change everything. What you truly desire often shows up the moment you stop needing it to define you. This is one of the deepest secrets. The less you need, the more you receive. Because true detachment isn't indifference, it's trust. It's the quiet confidence that what matches your vibration is already making its way to you. Think about this scientifically for a moment. In quantum physics, particles exist in a state of potential until they're observed, until consciousness collapses the wave function into a specific reality. Your desires exist in the quantum field as pure potential, but as long as you're desperately grasping for them, your consciousness is focused on their absence, not their presence. You're collapsing the wave function into not having rather than having. When something still hasn't shown up, it's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a message, a gentle indicator that part of your inner state is still misaligned. Maybe there's a belief you're holding that says, "I'm not ready," or "I don't deserve this." And the universe, loyal to your energy, reflects that belief back to you, not to punish you, but to invite you back into coherence. Dr. Dispenza's research on placebo effects reveals something profound about belief and manifestation. When people truly believe they're receiving a treatment, their bodies often heal as if they actually received it. Their belief literally changes their biology. But here's the key. It's not mental belief alone, it's embodied knowing. It's when your entire system, thoughts, emotions, and body align with a new reality. This is what true having feels like. It's not about accumulating things to fill a void. It's about expressing your wholeness through form. When you manifest from this place, what you receive feels like a natural extension of who you are. You don't use what you have to feel worthy. You feel worthy. And what you have simply reflects that truth. But here's something most people never consider, and it's the reason why so many successful manifestations still leave people feeling empty. There's a subtle danger in the idea of deserving. It creates pressure, makes you feel like you have to earn your dreams, that you have to be perfect, spiritual, disciplined to finally receive. The truth is, manifestation doesn't come from worthiness in the conventional sense. It comes from alignment with your true nature. You don't receive because you've done enough spiritual practices or positive thinking. You receive because you've remembered what you actually are. Infinite consciousness, temporarily focused through a human form. And infinite consciousness doesn't lack anything. It doesn't need to earn anything. It simply expresses itself through whatever forms match its current vibration. This realization changes everything. Because now you're not trying to get something from the universe. You're allowing the universe to express itself through you. But there's something deeper at play here that most people never address. Something that sabotages even the most sincere manifestation attempts. And until you understand this hidden force, you'll keep hitting invisible walls. The force I'm talking about is the programming you inherited before you could even speak. Long before we could speak, we were already being shaped. Before we even knew who we were absorbing vibrations, and many of those vibrations were never ours. They came from our parents, from our grandparents, from the unspoken pain in our lineage, from quiet fears, hidden guilt, generational beliefs passed down without words. The person you believe you are is often just a reflection of what you were told to be. These invisible patterns are subtle yet powerful. They live in phrases like, "Money is hard," "You have to struggle to be loved," "Don't dream too big, or you'll be disappointed." And without realizing it, we carry these ideas in our energetic field like invisible truths. Family bonds carry energy. Even when you physically distance yourself, the field remains. Because energy doesn't care about distance, it cares about frequency. And if you don't question, don't bring awareness to these inherited patterns, they keep running in the background, shaping your life, controlling your choices, limiting your manifestation. Epigenetic research now shows us that trauma, stress, and emotional patterns can literally be passed down through generations. The experiences of your grandparents can influence the expression of your genes today. But here's the remarkable part. Consciousness can override these inherited patterns. Awareness can literally change your genetic expression. There's a quiet war inside many of us. The essence wants to grow, expand, trust. But the programming says, Be careful. Don't get too hopeful. Stay safe. And you end up in conflict, wanting something deeply, but resisting it without even knowing why. That resistance comes from the ancestral voices operating silently beneath your conscious mind. These voices don't shout, they whisper. With the tone of your mother's worry, your father's skepticism, your family's relationship with money, success, love. And you believe those whispers are your thoughts. But they're not your thoughts, they're inherited stories. Stories of scarcity, fear, survival, roles you agreed to play without realizing it. The healing begins when you see these patterns with compassion. When you recognize that what was passed to you wasn't meant to limit you. It was simply all they knew. Your ancestors did the best they could with the consciousness they had. And now, you get to choose differently. You get to be the one who transforms the lineage. To truly be means to remember what's beneath all that conditioning, to know that before the fear there was love, before the limitation there was infinite potential, before the programming there was pure essence, and that essence was never broken, just buried, waiting for you to come back. But even when you begin to clear these inherited patterns, there's another layer that creates confusion in manifestation. A split that happens inside you that makes it impossible to maintain coherent vibration. And until you heal this split, you'll keep experiencing inner conflict that sabotages your results. Have you ever known what you should do, but still couldn't do it? Like your mind understood the path, but something deeper kept you frozen, pulled you back. That's the effect of disconnect. When your thoughts move one way, but your emotions are somewhere else entirely. When logic pushes forward, but the soul is tired of pretending. In this split, the self loses its center, the mind is powerful, but on its own, it gets lost. It analyzes, plans, organizes, but it doesn't feel. The heart feels, senses, intuits, but without the mind's structure, it can drift. True being only sustains itself when both walk together, when logic serves intuitive wisdom, when thinking supports feeling. Neuroscience helps us see this split clearly. The prefrontal cortex, the center of rational thought, is often in tension with the limbic system, where deep emotion lives. And when these two don't communicate, your body emits incoherence. That incoherence becomes energetic noise, and the universe picks up that noise and reflects it right back to you. That's when your identity starts to fracture. You become many versions of yourself, pulling in different directions. One part wants to grow, another part is scared. One part wants to open to love, another part doesn't trust. One part dreams, another hides. And with so many fragmented pieces, your actions become inconsistent. The vibration becomes muddy. Even when you say affirmations, right intentions, do your best to stay positive. If deep inside a quiet voice is whispering, "This isn't true," that's the frequency the universe responds to. Not the words, not the effort, but the vibration behind it. And that whisper, no matter how quiet, is what shapes your reality. So what's the solution? Not to silence the voice, but to listen to it, to allow the heart to speak, to slow down and feel. The mind wants quick answers, but the heart needs presence. It wants space. It needs to be heard without being fixed. This is where the real healing begins. When you no longer run from the disconnection, but turn toward it. When you bring the pieces back together. When thought and feeling begin to match. When what you say, what you feel, and what you do begin to align. That's coherence, that's presence, that's power. But there's still one more layer to this integration. One final polarity that needs to be balanced before you can become the full expression of who you're meant to be. And this balance is what separates those who manifest sporadically from those who live in continuous creation. Inside you, two forces are always at play. Not male and female in the biological sense, but the energetic principles of structure and flow. One builds, the other receives. One focuses, the other expands. The masculine energy brings direction, protection, clarity. The feminine brings intuition, creation, receptivity. When they are in harmony, you feel whole. Many of us live trapped in one side of this polarity. Some are stuck in constant control, always pushing, always planning, always needing results. In this rigid space, sensitivity is shut down. The body becomes tight. the intuition gets ignored. Masculine energy, when overused, turns into pressure. Action loses its soul. Movement loses meaning. Others drift in the opposite direction. They feel deeply, imagine endlessly, but can't ground their vision. They dream but don't act. They sense but don't structure. Feminine energy, without the container of the masculine, becomes scattered. Ideas float but never land. Light exists but doesn't shape into form. This imbalance creates confusion in your manifestation process. You want to create, but you hesitate. You want to move forward, but something feels unsafe. When you repress your sensitivity to stay in control, you block creativity. And when you resist structure to stay in the flow, you lose momentum. True manifestation happens when these two energies fuse, when action is rooted in presence, when strategy is guided by intuition. When the mind serves the heart, and the heart is supported by structure, that's when you become aligned. That's when you stop trying to force things and start dancing with life. This fusion isn't something you think through. It's something you feel into. It's the quiet choice to no longer divide yourself, to stop believing you must choose between focus and flow. You can, and must, have both, because in that union, your identity strengthens, not into something rigid, but into something alive, grounded and fluid, clear and receptive. And when this integration happens, something extraordinary emerges. You stop being someone who's trying to manifest and become someone through whom manifestation naturally occurs. You become the space where creation happens. You become the bridge between the invisible and the visible. There comes a moment in the journey when you stop trying to control and begin to co-create. A moment when you finally realize that manifestation isn't about strategy. It's about expression. It's not about chasing results. It's about allowing your inner truth to take form. That's when something awakens within you. You begin to act from fullness rather than need. Because your presence is so aligned, so centered, so alive, that creation becomes a natural extension. Every thought, every gesture, every decision is infused with intention. And that intention carries power. Not because it's forced, but because it's true. It's being made visible. Your identity is no longer a mask you wear. It becomes your material. You don't run from your story. You alchemize it. You know that every part of your journey, even the shadows, can become medicine, can become vibration, can become creation. Nothing is wasted. Everything serves. And in this place, time stops being the enemy. It becomes your partner. Because you're not rushing to arrive somewhere. You live in the knowing that what you've created vibrationally already exists. Even if the form hasn't arrived, the frequency has, and form always follows frequency. From here, manifestation isn't about achieving, it's about unfolding. You're not trying to make something happen. You're allowing something to emerge, something that already lives inside you, something that no longer needs permission, just presence. There's a sacred relationship between intention and expression. Intention is the seed, expression is the bloom, and you live in the space between, where being fuels doing and doing reflects being, where you're no longer asking for a miracle, because you've remembered you are the miracle. At this point in the journey, everything makes sense. The struggle quiets, the urgency dissolves. You're no longer chasing, you're allowing, and what once felt distant now feels inevitable, because you're no longer seeking something to complete you. You're expressing what's already whole. Now pause, take a breath. Feel your body, right here, right now. Feel the space around you, the quiet, the stillness. This isn't emptiness. This is where it all begins. True manifestation doesn't start with effort, plans, or goals. It starts with presence, with that subtle, sacred space where you are simply being. This is the forgotten truth behind be, do, have. First, you be. Then, you do. And only then you have. When you begin from being, everything else falls into place. Action gains meaning. Results begin to align. Life begins to reflect the clarity inside of you. And maybe the most beautiful part is realizing you were never far from this place. It was never lost. It was only covered up by noise, by fear, by the stories you were told. But even in the middle of all that, your essence remained quiet, waiting, patiently calling you home. The real question isn't what do you want to have, Dao, it's who are you willing to be, not once, but every day, in every breath, in every choice. Because it's not your effort that shapes your life, it's your state, your being. So close your eyes for a moment, feel the breath, feel the now, and remember you already are. And everything that matches that truth will find you. Because the universe doesn't need to be convinced, it only needs to recognize your vibration. You are the origin point of your reality, and that is the real miracle.